Om Sat Gurubhyo Namaha. My pranams to our Paramaguru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam. I am Aishwarya Harish, the Cultural Coordinator for Nrityodaya, the Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai. And we are very happy to have all of you gathered here for the 20th session of the Young Researchers Forum, a joint initiative of Nrityodaya Mumbai and Center for Excellence Art and Culture, Shasam Jain College, Chennai. It has been a constant endeavor for us to provide this initiative as a worthy platform for new research and more young researchers to come forward and present their work. So we request all those who are interested to kindly write into us at the tyrforum@gmail.com. We begin today's session on an auspicious note with a prayer rendered by Ms. Ramya Harish from Singapore, Chetas.
Thank you. Oh, Pranamami Patanjalim Pranamami Patanjalim Pranamami Patanjalim Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacham Malam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakarotam Pravaram Munina Patanjalim Pranjaliranatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankhachakrasadharinam Sahasrashirasam Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Pranamami Patanjalim Pranamami Patanjalim.
Thank you, Ramya, for that very soothing prayer. I now call upon Dr. Jayashree Rajagopalan, Director, Nrityodaya, the Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai, to welcome our audience today.
Om Sat Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaskar. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you who have joined today for the 20th session of the Young Researchers Forum, initiated by our institution, Nrityodaya, the Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai, and the Center of Excellence, Art and Culture, Shankarlal Sundarbai Shashun Jain College for Women, Chennai. We've been very fortunate to have had our revered Guru, Padma Bhushan, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, flag off this entire series with a very inspiring inaugural lecture stressing the need for research in Indic studies to show the depth of our ancient knowledge and its relevance today. And this is in the hands of all the youngsters, and that is why we created this forum for you all. I offer my humble pranams to my Guru, Paduka, and thank you so much for being with us at every session as a pillar of strength, guiding us constantly. The young researcher today is Jaya B, who is dealing with an excellent topic, the concept of consciousness in phenomenology and yoga darshana. So relevant for this week, which is being celebrated as the Yoga Week. And we are very proud that you've undertaken such a wonderful work. A very warm welcome, Jaya, to the Young Researchers Forum. And we are very grateful to our expert, Dr. Krishnan VH, another member from Mumbai. I welcome you here, sir. We are so happy to have you who have been associated both with the philosophy and the yoga department. It is one very gratifying fact that Mumbai University offers a full-fledged course, an academic course in yoga, and it still holds its philosophy department very high. So Dr. Krishnan has been associated with both these departments, and we are very happy to welcome you here. We look forward to a very interesting session on yoga and the philosophy attached to it. So thank you. Thank you, both of you, for being with us, and all the other members who have joined us, and our dear Guru. A warm welcome again to all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Jayashree. I would now like to call upon Dr. Rajshri Vasudevan, Director, Center for Excellence Art and Culture, Shasam Jain College, to introduce the speakers for this evening.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Thank you, Aishwarya, for asking me to introduce the guests for today. It is said philosophy is the love of wisdom. And it is our good fortune that in India we have had a long lineage of philosophical traditions, matched to some extent by the West as well. And we have today two people with us who are going to explore the different aspects of phenomenology and yoga darshan. We have the young researcher, that is Ms. Jaya, and the expert, Dr. Krishnan. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Krishnan, beginning with salutations to our Guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam. Dr. Krishnan VH has a doctorate in philosophy from Mumbai University, an MA in philosophy and MA Yoga philosophy from Mumbai University. His MA dissertation was on the concept of yoga symbolized in the mythological gods of the Puranas, and that was from Nagpur. He has a BA Yoga Philosophy from Nagpur University, a BCom Mumbai University, CISA, and NET qualified in 2017, PMP training, Aptech India 2009, base SAS programmer certification, SAS Institute US 2008, and a 2-year Jyotirvid from Bharati Vidya Bhavan, Mumbai 2001. So a very wonderful blend of, I would say, both the worlds, the material and the spiritual. His experiences include guest lecturer, advanced diploma in yoga, KJ Somaya Center for Buddhist Studies, coordinator, diploma in yoga Upasana course in SIS College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Mumbai, visiting lecturer, advanced diploma in yoga for Kashmir Shaivism, consciousness studies and Advaita Vedanta, Mumbai University. He has also been an audit manager, Standard Chartered Bank, Singapore, Citibank NA Senior Auditor, Manager, Singapore, Project Manager Back-end Conversion, Global Payments Asia Pacific Singapore Private Limited, HSBC Professional Services India Limited, HPSI Manager IT Audit, HS Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation India Limited, Associate Vice President Business Strategy and Development. So that is really a wide range of experiences, and he brings all that to the table today in our session. His publications include various papers in Yoga Symposium IIT Mumbai, SIS College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Indian Council of Philosophical Research, University of Mumbai, Jain University, Bengaluru. He has successfully coordinated and conducted Yoga Day celebrations in Mumbai University in 2018, and he is presently working independently on a book on the philosophy of immanence and transcendence. So I think he is the appropriate choice for today's session, and I would really thank my good friend, Dr. Uma Shankar, principal of SIS College, for suggesting his name as the person who would be able to do full justice to the session. So welcome you, sir, and we are very happy to have you in our midst today. Moving on to our young researcher, Ms. Jaya. Academically, she has an MA Philosophy, University of Kerala, BA Philosophy, University of Calicut, and she's currently doing MPhil in Philosophy in the University of Kerala. Her experience includes 1 year experience as a web content writer in Manira.in, as also as a faculty in Indian Logic in Astra Net Coaching Center, Thiruvananthapuram, and in Paramjyoti Net Coaching Center, Karakutam, Thiruvananthapuram. She has embarked on this research journey with this particular topic. So we look forward to your presentation, and I'm sure you will do full justice to it, because those of us who have done some amount of philosophy know that it is not an easy topic. Phenomenology is something which has come right from ancient times in the West, particularly down from Hegel, and it got crystallized in Husserl's philosophy. Looking forward to your presentation. Over to you, Ms. Jaya. Thank you.
Ma'am, can I share my slide?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yes, it is. It is. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. I convey my sincere gratitude to Rajshri ma'am and my mentor Dr. L. Vijay sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity to express my intense love towards our philosophical tradition. And I express my gratitude to expert of the session, Dr. Krishnan sir. And of course, I thanked to Nrityodaya and the Center for Excellence, Art and Culture, Shasan College, for conducting this Young Researchers Forum. It is a great chance for young research scholars like me to present papers in Indian culture and history to a wide interested audience from across the globe. Thank you, ma'am. My paper is about the concept of pure consciousness in phenomenology and Yoga Darshana. In this presentation, I would like to initiate a comparative study of the concept of pure consciousness in phenomenology and Yoga Darshana, bringing out its points to convergence and divergence. First of all, I would give the consciousness. Pure consciousness is a state that is freed from all bondages. Man is a conscious living being. It is both surprising and mystifying how living cells, supposedly non-conscious biological things, can be coordinated to produce a conscious being. This is a major debatable core issue in the whole history of philosophy. In contemporary philosophy, some philosophers tried to explain consciousness in neurophysiological or physical terms, while some other thinkers give a neo-functionalist, neo-behavioralist, and cognitive approach to settle down the hard problem of consciousness. In the history of Western thought, many important theories and writings have emerged regarding the human nature of consciousness. Plato, Aristotle, Descartes are some of the great thinkers who have inquired and reflected on the concept of consciousness. There are numerous views which are prevalent in Indian philosophy also. One of the major problems in the study of consciousness is that it is not an easy task to give a comprehensive definition of consciousness. As a cognitive approach to the problem of consciousness, David Chalmers, he's an Australian philosopher and cognitive scientist specialized in the areas of philosophy of mind and language, opined that the real hard problem of consciousness is the problem of experience. First of all, I would give a gist of the presentation. The first quote. Phenomenology is a philosophical study about consciousness. Its prime goal is the straightforward investigation and description of phenomena without theories and as free as possible from preconceptions and presuppositions. Basically, phenomenology demands the need for an object-directed study of phenomena. This object-directed study is known as the intentional approach to phenomena. This approach requires the suspension of all our judgments regarding the phenomena. The historical antecedent of modern phenomenology is, for the most part, idealistic. The theory derived from much of its inspiration from Descartes' subjectivism and his analysis of the self and its activities, and from Kantian analysis of the phenomenal world, and from Hegelian phenomenology of mind. The term phenomenology reminds us of Kantian distinction between phenomenon and nomen. Husserl was opposed to this dualism of Kant. He agrees that only phenomenon is given, but in it is given the very essence of that which is. When one has described the phenomena, one has described all that can be described. The problem of reconciling reality and thought about reality is as old as philosophy itself. We meet consciousness as the consciousness of something and something as the object of consciousness. The history of philosophy is a series of attempts to reconciliation of these two aspects, the subjective and the objective. The difference in reconciling occurs due to the more or less emphasis on the subjective or the objective. Husserlian phenomenology is an attempt at reconciling them. But he too experienced in himself this difference of emphasis in his reconciling consciousness and reality. In 20th century, phenomenology is associated with the work and school of Edmund Husserl. His celebrated works, The Ideas, this is his book, basic book of phenomenology. Husserlian thought is the solid foundation of the contemporary Western philosophy. According to Husserl, human consciousness is a dynamic notion which transcends itself to meet its end. He explained that we are conscious about an object, not as a static phenomenon that helps inside our head. Consciousness chases its object. That means all consciousness is consciousness of something. The central insight in phenomenological analysis is the theory of intentionality. He owed to Brentano for this theory. According to Brentano, all physical phenomena intentionally contain an object. Husserl objects to this conception of the immanence of the intentional object to consciousness. For him, intentionality means the directedness of the act of consciousness to some object. This object is not immanent to consciousness itself, but remains transcended to it. For phenomenology, it is not of importance whether or not the subject of consciousness actually exists. Husserlian phenomena is not same as our conception of phenomena. For example, we consider coconut as an ingredient in our food. And also in a theological sense, coconut is an offering to God in Hindu temples, especially for Lord Ganpati. Husserl's conception of phenomena is not just names and its related purposes. More than he was concerned about the essence of phenomena. In order to perceive the essence of phenomena from its correlates, he uses a method which shows resemblance with Neti notion of indefinable state of Brahman in Vedanta Darshana. The prescribed methodology is called as epoch-making or bracketing. It is the method of suspension of all our existing beliefs and judgments. He says in the final stage that the essence of the phenomena is fully unveiled to our pure consciousness. The important part of phenomenology is its methodology used for philosophical inquiry. In other words, the most reliable access to reality. Phenomenologists sequentially explain the method of understanding the phenomenon or thing in themselves. The methods are, first one is phenomenological reduction, and eidetic reduction, and transcendental reduction. In the first stage, we are understanding the phenomena by suspending all our presuppositions and to create the pure data of experience through phenomenological reduction. According to him, this process is known as bracketing. Through bracketing, we get phenomenologically reduced state of phenomena. Bracketing is the negative aspect in grasping the essence. It is the radical and universal elimination of any aspect of factual existence. The factual or the existential is kept in parenthesis or in bracket. Things under consideration may have existence, but it has no significance whatsoever with regard to the essence of things. Besides the elimination of existence, to describe the phenomena correctly, the phenomenologist too must be free from all cultural and philosophical biases. It requires an aesthetic neutrality in one's attitude to the phenomenon of one's awareness. In second stage, our consciousness, that is eidetic reduction. Our consciousness perceives the universal of pure essence. The universal, which is the object of phenomenological investigation, can be grasped only through our actual experience. In other words, in eidetic reduction, we are understanding the abstract essence or concept underlying the pure phenomena of consciousness. It is the gradual penetration into the purified essential residue, gradually revealing the pure subjectivity as the exclusive source of all objectivity. The final stage of reduction, that is transcendental reduction. We need more than just looking at the reduced phenomena, which requires a keen analysis of the manner in which objects are constituted or synthesized in the process of knowledge. The constitution of knowledge is the real essence. Phenomenologists are in search of a pure or reduced or the essence of the thing. In Husserlian conception, our subjectivity transcends itself. He calls this self or this subjectivity as transcendental subjectivity. According to Husserl, the entire world is based on subjectivity and it needs a further reduction, that is a transcendental reduction. Here we are bracketing not only the things, but also the phenomenal selves, including ourselves. In the stage of transcendental reduction, the entire reality is converted into a transcendental residued datum. This datum is the basis of all knowledge. Husserl's mature thought begins with a concern for the foundations of mathematics, continues with ego. His merit consists in the fact that he introduced for the first time the phenomenological method that brought the subjective and the objective to their right place. Thus, the greatest contribution of Husserl is the theory of intentionality, with the help of which the subject and object are brought closer to reconciliation. Many of the later philosophers who used the phenomenological method deviated from him, regarding the importance given to essence rather than existence. But in spite of this difference, contemporary continental philosophers greatly owe to Husserl's contribution to phenomenology. Since Husserl didn't develop a philosophy with the application of phenomenological method, he could not see some of the weak points in his method. All the same, we cannot but admire the unique contribution of him to the philosophical world. Next, I move on to the second core portion of this paper, that is concept of consciousness in Yoga Darshana. Yoga is a Hindu school of thought associated with the school of Sankhya as a practical method for achieving understanding the self. Yoga is the discipline necessary for the pure object to recognize itself and separate itself from the empirical reality with which it is confused. Various kinds of involvement with the ego and desires and aversions are responsible for fluctuations of the mind step that can only be overcome by training. Yoga includes moral restraints and spiritual imperatives, as well as the familiar asanas designed to withdraw consciousness from the senses, focus the mind, and ultimately achieve meditation in which the self is completely and transparently understood, and that is samadhi. Patanjali, Sage Patanjali, is the founder of yoga. It's a pragmatic method for identifying the self. Yoga Sutra of Patanjali is considered to be the basic text of this system. According to Patanjali, yoga doesn't mean union, but spiritual effort to attain perfection through control of the body, sense, and mind through the discrimination between Purush and Prakriti. Yoga understands consciousness as Chitta Bhumi. There are 5 levels of Chitta Bhumi or mental life. According to Yoga Darshana, to obtain steadiness of mind, mind must pass through 5 stages of bhumis. The difference in the stages are due to the predominance of three gunas, that is sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are the 5 levels of chitta bhumis. This is the lowest level, Kshipta. Then we move on to Mudha and Vikshipta, then Ekagra, and the highest level is Niruddha. This is the like Samadhi. So let me explain one by one. First, Kshipta. The lowest level, when the attempt made to make reason steady, the mind here becomes restless and agitated due to the excess of Rajasika guna and mind locked between the sense object. Chitta is very much distributed and attached with worldly objects. And this bhumi is called Kshipta. That means mind is restless due to the excess of Rajasika guna. Mind is full of action. Then another higher level is Mudha. The second level, when mind exerts greater force to fix it, it becomes torpid and feel asleep. In this stage, mind has the predominance of tamas, mind more tend towards ignorance and lethargy. This stage of chitta is known as Mudha. And the third stage, that is Vikshipta, it is more higher than Mudha. The third bhumi is called Vikshipta. Here, mind is still make greater effort and becomes distracted due to the predominance of sattva. But Rajasika guna also asserts itself at times. This is the stage of chitta where sattva guna dominates the other two gunas. In this stage, yoga begins and chitta tries to attain God or supreme soul. Due to the sattva dominance, it is found that there is temporary ceasing of the modifications of the chitta. The fourth level, when mind do not give up our attempt even, then it becomes centered or more concentrated on the object of meditation. In this stage, mind is fully dominated by sattva, rajas, and tamas subdued. In this stage, chitta is fixed to some object due to the sattva preponderance. It is known as ekagra. For example, the flame of a candle light remains always pointing up without flickering hither and thither. The fifth level, the highest level. The fifth level is the highest level and is called Niruddha. Here, mind make a steady effort to keep our mind at that level. It becomes restrained and functions stop. In this stage, the impressions remain in the chitta and after the cessation of all modifications. Ekagra and Niruddha are considered as conducive to Samadhi. Samadhi means concentration. The mind is completely absorbed in the object of meditation. It is the highest means to realize the cessation of mental modifications, which is the end. It is the ascetic state in which the connection with the external world is broken and through which one has to pass before obtaining liberation. Samadhi is of two kinds, that is Samprajnata Samadhi and Asamprajnata Samadhi. It is also known as Sabhinya Samadhi and Nirbhinya Samadhi. In the former, the consciousness of the object of meditation persists in Samprajnata Samadhi, that is conscious Samadhi. And in the later, it is transcendent. The former is Ekagra and later is Niruddha. Asamprajnata Samadhi is also known as supra-conscious Samadhi. Samprajnata Samadhi, that means conscious Samadhi. In this form of Samadhi, the aspirant becomes aware of his or her concentration. When the chitta is concentrated on one object, the similar kind of object of modifications occurs in the chitta. This is known as conscious Samadhi or Samprajna. Concentrating on one object leads to controlling the distracted mind, which is often attaches to different objects of the world. Thus, it is said that focusing on one object implies disassociating from other objects. since attachment for worldly pleasures cause suffering. The attention towards a particular object moves worldly sufferings and passion for worldly pleasures. This helps to receive the real knowledge of an object and becomes free from law of karma and karmic influx. This conscious samadhi is further divided into 4 types. They are Savitarka Samadhi, Savichara Samadhi, Sanada Samadhi, and Sasmita Samadhi. Let me explain one by one. Savitarka Samadhi, in this stage, the chitta is concentrated on a gross object and clearly identify it through meditation. For example, meditating to see the top of a nose. It's tip of the nose. Yes. Then Savichara Samadhi. In this stage, the chitta is concentrated on subtle object and assumes its form. For example, concentrating on tanmatras. That means Rupa Rasa Gandha Shabda Sparsha. That is the 5 tanmatras. Pancha tanmatras it also means. Then Sanada Samadhi. In this stage, the chitta is concentrated on a sattvika, subtler object and produces happiness and joy. It even helps in attaining bliss. Then Sasmita Samadhi is in this stage, the chitta identified with the self. Hence, individuality becomes an existent. Move on to Asamprajnata Samadhi. Asamprajnata Samadhi, it is a supra-conscious concentration where the meditator and the object of meditation are completely fused together and there is not even consciousness of meditation. Here, no mental modification arises. It is the highest form of divine madness, perfect mystic ecstasy, difficult to describe and more difficult to attain. Even those who attain it cannot retain no longer. Immediately or after very short time, the body breaks and they obtain complete liberation. Yoga generates certain supra-normal powers, but they should be avoided and attention should be fixed only on liberation, which is the end of human life. The ideal is independence and eternal and free life of the Purush, free from Prakriti. Let me conclude my paper. And in conclusion, I include some of my findings, comparative findings. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you. Please continue.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. While considering the two independent notion of pure consciousness, phenomenology of Husserl and Patanjali Yoga Darshana, we can trace glimpse of interesting parallels. While we compare Yoga Darshana with phenomenology, the entire phenomenological inquiry amounts to Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Another major comparative notion, the understanding of phenomena or thing in themselves, which can be seen in the methods of phenomenological inquiry in Husserlian phenomenology and 5 levels of Chitta Bhumi in Patanjali Yoga Darshana. Most important theme common in each thought is the notion of transcendental subjectivity and the highest level of Chitta Bhumi that I already mentioned, Niruddha, the complete modified Chitta or pure consciousness. The first 2 stages of phenomenological process, that is phenomenological reduction and eidetic reduction, can be compared with the Samprajnata Samadhi and its kinds, that 4 kinds. And the last stage, transcendental reduction, can be compared with Asamprajnata Samadhi, that is supra-conscious Samadhi. In former, the consciousness is in the inward or entangled form. But in final stage, it will be in the form of disentanglement. In this stage, the reality is converted to a transcendentally reduced form. This form of pure consciousness is the basis of all knowledge. Western philosophy discussed about consciousness in the 19th and 20th century. But in India, there were discussions about pure consciousness since its earliest beginnings. beginnings. The concept of pure consciousness and its highest state was understood and experienced through Yoga Darshana by our great rishis. The efficacy and deep transformative power of yoga speaks volumes about its relevance and value. By this, it is clear that India's and Indian philosophy's deep thoughts are of greater value. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jaya. That was a good capsule of comparing two large systems, equally important in both sides of the philosophical spectrum. So before I make any comments, I would request our expert, Dr. Krishnan, to give his observations. And after his talk, we will have the interaction session. So it will be thrown open to questions, which will be posted on our FB chat box. And I'll pick it up from there and ask both the researcher and the expert. Over to you, Dr. Krishnan.
Thank you, madam. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Salutations to Patanjali. The researcher has brought out a fine comparison of Rishi Patanjali's methods and Husserl's phenomenology. I think very few have compared or embarked on this kind of a comparison. I found very few researchers who have done this kind of a comparison. She has brought it out well in a small time, and she has brought out some very good, astounding connections between the two. Now, what we have generally understood about philosophy in the Western world and philosophy in East, that in the West it is said that it is a love of wisdom, and that itself is given the word philo and sophia. So they seek knowledge, they seek wisdom. Now, where does that seeking lead to? It leads one to the subject, to the being. So from to knowing, one has to move to the being, So Husserl has brought it out very nicely in the Western world. He saw the crisis of objectivity, and both in the scientific community, because he was a mathematician, and in the philosophical community. And he tried to, by his Zuder-Sachin, use of the words Zuder-Sachin, back to the subject. He brought the focus entirely back on the living subject. Now, the common area of philosophy in both Indian and Western philosophy is consciousness, because it is our only window to reality. In fact, you can say that consciousness is our only reality. Without it, there is no reality. You cannot have anything without consciousness. So Husserl realized it. He has brought it out in a very methodical way. And just as Patanjali Muni has brought it out in a very methodical way, as the researcher has pointed out. And now in these two instances, where does the emphasis lie? Does it lie in the being or in the knowing consciousness? Where do we focus? Is this seeking going to be infinite activity and infinite engagement? Is it never going to end? So Patanjali Muni said it has to end somewhere. It has to end somewhere. And that is your separation of the seeking seeker, the chitta, by quietening it, by making it know the pure subject, which is what Husserl has also done. In fact, in his later works, because in his earlier works, he had refused to accept a transcendental ego. Now, because there were many arguments for and against, and in the circles of philosophy in the West, they brought out beautifully that without the ego, you cannot have a pole of experience, a center of experience. Then he had to accept it that every experience is for somebody, for some identity. And then he had to accept that there is a transcendental ego. Now, Patanjali Muni had already, he was a stalwart in yoga philosophy. He was a foremost exponent. He was a compiler. Now, he laid out certain methods, eight-limbed yoga, by which you could come back to the being consciousness, where the Sat and the Chit part are one and the same. There is absolute identity within. The seeker is dissolved, and it has dissolved in pure awareness of the sort which is the very own self, the very own pure consciousness. Now, Husserl, to do justice to Husserl, he has broached on this subject. He has reached up to the pre-reflective consciousness, pre-reflective self-awareness, or pre-reflective self-consciousness. But the point is, reaching there, he again came back to intentionality. So his methods of bracketing, reduction, naming, as the researcher brought it out very well, yes, they lead to some activities to find out the transcendental subject. But there was no end. There was no end. The teleos, the purpose of all this activity, finally he rejected the transcendental subject and came back to the objective consciousness, his intentionality. Because without it, the world would not run. Without it, the life world, the terms which he used, the life world would not run. Now, this pre-reflective self-awareness, he has in fact listed out three kinds of consciousness: the pre-reflective consciousness, the consciousness which is internally aware of itself, and the third is the intentional consciousness. If we see it in Yoga Darshana, almost a similar kind of categorization has been done. Because if you see the Samprajnata Samadhis, these are also states of the conscious awareness on the object, on the subtle object. On the subtle object is on the Asmita Samprajnata. Now, what is the Asmita Samprajnata? It is a Sabija Samadhi, it is a Samprajnata Samadhi, but it is concentrating on the object. But at the same time, it is studying the consciousness, which is concentrating on the object. Exactly the same which Husserl has done. So it was astounding to know that there are so many similarities between Patanjali Yoga Shastra and Husserl's phenomenology, the bracketing. Now, what is bracketing? Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam tad nirodha. Vairagyabhyam. Satu Dirgha Kala Nairantare Satkara Sevito Dhrida Bhumi is Abhyasa's ultimate extension. And then Drishta Anushravika Vishya Vitrashnasya Vashikara Sagnya Vairagyam. So Drishta Anushravika Vishayas, whatever we have seen and heard, or whatever are our suppositions about a particular object, we are detached to it. Exactly the bracketing which we observe in Husserl's phenomenology. Now, the eidetic reductions, where Madam has rightly pointed out, the transcendental reduction, where he has even bracketed the Asmita. The Asmita has been bracketed so that we can move forward and more inward, to reach the transcendental ego, the pure Sattva Purusha. Now, up to here, we are in parallel. Husserl's phenomenology and Patanjali Yoga Shastra, that they reach up to the transcendental ego. From here, what? In fact, I was when I was reading certain padams, the third padam or third padam of Patanjali Yoga Shastra of Siddhis, Vibhutis, from 3.1 to 3.18, it's a methodology of Dharana Dhyana Samadhi. And from 3.35, he has beautifully mentioned about the pre-reflective, how to reach that consciousness of which is mentioned by Husserl, how to reach that pure consciousness. So first you reach that intersubjective consciousness, which is your Sattva Purusha. So Patanjali Muni mentions in 3.35, Sattva Purusha, pure Atyanta Sankirnayor, Bhoga Apavarga, if we concentrate on the otherness, Pararthatvat Swarthatvat, Samyogat, Samyamat, Purusha Jnanam. How does the Purusha Jnanam, how does the knowledge of the pure consciousness result? By focusing on the otherness, concentrating on the otherness in its object focused awareness. Same to same, I feel, I don't know how, but Husserl mention of the transcendental reduction, if you read, you will come to the same rendition, the same explanation, that you concentrate on the otherness and for a subject, the awareness for a subject, the transcendental ego. And that's how they have reached that transcendental ego. The only matter what happens is they return back, whereas Patanjali Muni mentions it for Kaivalyam. He goes ahead. He goes ahead in the samyamas, and he goes ahead in the samyamas, which I feel Heidegger has taken in Being and Time. Because when Patanjali Muni asks, or rather puts it in the sutras, he says that you have to concentrate on the Shanatrat Kramayor. See, either you concentrate on the time or you concentrate on the sequence. Now, which is more transcendental? Is time a transcendent phenomenon, or is a sequence a transcendent phenomenon? You can reach your own conclusions, because I would not be saying it right now. It's beautifully brought out in Patanjali Yoga Sutras how they go ahead, and this Heidegger has done in Being and Time, that you have to it is a sequence which is more transcendent to time, because time is within the mind and it is more objectified. Now the concentration which is discerning, which discerns at that fine point between the otherness and for myself, that is the Vivekaja Jnanam. Vivekaja Jnanam, once it is awakened, that is the exact methodology which Patanjali Muni has brought out. These aspects may or may not have been brought into focus by Husserl, but somehow it does come across when he mentions about intersubjectivity and the transcendental ego. So overall, I think the researcher has done good justice in bringing out the Chitta Bhumis, and many people, I would say, those who are well-versed philosophers or astute philosophers, if when they start comparing Husserl and, or rather any Western philosopher, because I myself did my comparison of Hegel and Patanjali Muni and even Shankara and Buddhism, because Mahayana Buddhism. But there, what I have observed is we need to maintain a strictly no higher value, greater value. No, each one has their own place. It's good and well brought out. Each one has their own place, and they have brought about their own in their own way, in their own social environment, in their own scientific environment, the truth. And the truth is that the being exists, a transcendental being is there, and it has to be reached in certain steps. Now, except that we focus more on detachment, vairagyam, the vairagyam which leads us to a state where we would rather like to be and not go further to, move back to the seeking. Why should we seek when we have already got what we have sought? So that's a question that we need to ask. Where does it lie? Why do we need to take a, and that is brought out again by Patanjali Muni, that he says that for others, the world continues, and even from this highest stage, some people are drawn back. So Padam 3, that is chapter 3 of Patanjali Yoga Sutras is astounding, ma'am. Do have a keener look or a greater look at it, because you have brought it out very well. And I would ask every researcher, if they are doing research on comparative philosophy, to go in depth into chapter 3, not just the siddhis. You can ignore 3.19 to 3.34. All the siddhis you can ignore. But the up to 3.18 and from 3.35 to 3.50, astounding. And every method has been adopted by the West scientific community. You can name, you can translate the name into a ditto translated name in the Western philosophy. So I would end it with a good appreciation of the researcher's abstract. She has well brought it out, her presentation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Krishnan. I think it's such a topic that for you to even give your expert comments in a summary is very difficult. And you did it admirably, because you were able to give her the right kind of appreciation, as also the inputs where she should look for those points which I think probably she has not gone into detail in her abstract, which is perfectly understandable, because 20 minutes is not enough time to even introduce either of the two systems. Both of them are huge. And to do a comparison between the two of them in as brief and as clear a manner as possible is difficult. So that was very appreciable, and also to Dr. Krishnan for helping her navigate, in a sense, the two aspects. But the questions have started coming in. Of course, some of them are, I think, by students who are not familiar with phenomenology, and their only understanding is based on what Ms. Jaya has said just now. So there are some questions which I think are revealing that, but I will anyway ask it here. You can explain it as you feel like. One of the questions is, some are similar, so I'll just club them together to Ms. Jaya. When we compare Western and Indian systems, is it for proving that Indian systems are as good as the West? Okay, that is one question. The other question is that has any other research undertaken by any other Western researcher is there in the past, or has this kind of research been done only by Indian researchers? So there are many others which have come, but I'll just begin with these two. Yes.
Yes. The first question, my answer is no better than this or better than that. Because am I audible? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Ma. Please go ahead. Yes.
Yes,
The
yes.
voice was breaking a little, but we can hear you.
Yeah, because of network. Yeah. The first question is which method is better than is it, ma'am?
Not just which method is better. I think she's also asking whether when we compare the two, is it for proving that Indian systems are as good as the West? See, I understand that many of these students have been brought up in what we call as the Macaulayan system of education. Okay, so probably the question is stemming from the fact that constantly Indians want some kind of foreign validation for what we have done to show that it's great. So I think that is what the question is. Yes.
Yes. For this question, my answer, and with from my understanding of these concepts, there is no better or worse thing. because it is always understanding a thing. It makes us better. So I can't I can't measure the yoga system is good or phenomenology is good. So I am not mature enough to measure it.
Okay, there is also this question as to whether has such kind of research been done by anybody in the West? Do you have any idea about that? Probably, I think since you're entering into your research only now, I think it will come in review of literature. So you can just note the question and put it as part of your thesis.
Just to
Yes.
add, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Dr. Humphrey Williams has compared the two systems, phenomenology and Patanjali's yoga system. And you can even read Dan Zahavi. He is a great Husserlian phenomenologist. He has tried to justify Husserl's methods. And because later Heidegger has critiqued Husserl to a very large extent and said that Husserl has not seen this, Husserl has not seen that. But see, the events of the World War and the German invasions, etc. apart, Heidegger's systems were slightly held under skepticism, but he was also definitely a good philosopher. That apart, Husserl has done full justice. Now, only thing is, if you would give me the liberty to answer the first question, see, apart from holding a Western system as higher or an Indian system as higher, it's not about a comparison that we are drawing. By comparison, we learn much better about our system. No doubt many of us have been brought up in the Macaulayan style of education where you're asked to question everything. You're asked to question your parents, you're asked to question your teachers, and whether you question it in the right fashion or wrong fashion. But see, there is a certain method in Indian systems also where you approach a guru with all humility and you place your entire trust in the guru to lead you to the question to which you have sought answers to. This kind of you may say it's a formality, you may say it's an informal environment, but finally it decides and shapes what your society is about. Now, is your society an expansionist society? Is your society a colonizing society? See, there are many aspects which can be brought about. Is your society one which has done a lot of genocides which have happened, etc., etc.? We need not go into that. But the comparison brings about a better understanding about the two philosophies. So we have to do a reduction, bracketing. We have to do a bracketing of our comparing attitudes, because that whether this is greater or that is greater, that is only a pure you can say prejudice. We should stop that with Hegel, because Hegel had much prejudice against Indian philosophy. He was a great philosopher. In fact, I have done my research on Hegel. Great philosopher, but we should stop that kind of a prejudice that this one was greater or that one was greater. Bracket it and go ahead. See how beautifully you can arrive at a synthesis between the two systems. Has it been brought about beautifully in both? And our means of communication now is majorly English, or language is English, which itself comes from the Western world. It's a colonial language. So what we are conversing in right now, what I'm trying to communicate. So, okay, there have been a lot of mistakes done by them, a lot of mistakes done by us. Forget all that, get into the attitude of learning and try to beautifully bring out, we can learn better. We can reach the state of Kaivalyam. It is an actuality. And that's what Husserl has also told, it's an actuality. Whether we live that actuality in society, that's a different question altogether. Yeah, sorry, ma'am.
No, that's okay. In fact, you mentioned the word bracketing even in the explanation so that process is very much there, I think, in our understanding of the two systems. There are, of course, two other quick questions to Ms. Jaya. One is that you have mentioned about Patanjali yoga system. Can we do the comparison with other yoga systems like Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga, or is it only for Patanjali system? That is one question. And the other is, it is stated that Patanjali Muni lived years ago and he has deciphered the paths of yoga, which we call today as phenomenology. Does that mean that we were much more advanced, and probably Husserl actually, she has used the word copied, but I suppose that's because it's a student. Husserl actually took inspiration from Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. So these are two questions, and there are two more which I will ask after you finish answering them.
Yes, the same answer again I will give, because we cannot say which system is more advanced, because it's all about our subjective understanding of concepts and notions in our world. So according to your experience, you can decide, or you can understand well which system is best for you. That's my answer.
Okay, there is a question which is quite direct. You had mentioned about the three gunas. So the question is that what would be the equivalent of the three guna in Western philosophy, especially like phenomenology?
Sorry, ma'am, I don't know. I'm
Sir,
Would you like to? Yes,
yeah,
would you like
it's
to please?
actually cognition, cognition, and memory. See, cognition, cognition, and memory. These are the cognitive aspect is the sattva aspect. You reflect upon certain things, your thoughts, phenomena, whatever it be, you reflect. Now, cognition is the will that motivates you, that impulse that motivates you to do that reflection. And finally, when it is stored into memory. So you can call it cognition, cognition, and some people put it as will separately, but cognition, cognition, and memory, these are the three gunas actually. This has been, you can say, the similar term in, this is a similar term in Western philosophy, but you can find it in Patanjali Yoga Sutras in Prakasha Kriya Sthiti. Prakasha is a very illumination aspect where you illuminate a subject, and that is an object. You illuminate an object. Kriya is the action which motivates you to illuminate certain objects, is the impulse. And finally, sthiti. Sthiti is a state you attain, a state you attain by pushing it into memory. You retain certain understandings of it, and that is what he has in fact defined memory as. So I would, in fact, if you give me the liberty to answer the first question also, which was directed at the researcher, madam, actually, whether it is copied or whether it is not copied, does it really matter? Does it really, okay, certain injustices have happened, does it really matter? What we need is to get into the subject. What is it talking about? Your own consciousness, your own being, your own pure reflective awareness, your own pre-reflective consciousness. Can we reach up to there? Can we do a phenomenal reduction, or can we do Ashtanga yoga, eight-limbed yoga? You okay? First two steps are social laws, etc. The balance 6 steps. Can we do the yasana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, and come to this phenomenological reduction where you get the output as a pure transcendental subject? You know, in India, there is a practice called as Sandhya Vandanam, where they achieve this. I have myself experimented for the last 30 years. I've done it religiously. It's an act of, you may say it's a prayer, but it's not a prayer. It's an act of meditation. We do the pranayama Gayatri, and then we do the japa of the Gayatri and try to come back to the identity. In fact, Ramana Maharshi also speaks about the same question. question the I. Come back to the being. Your answer lies in the identity, the being. And once you start, hitting out at the asmita, the empirical ego, you pierce it, and through that you come to the transcendental ego. You reach the being. So that's all, ma'am. If I've taken time, I apologize.
No, that's okay. You have explained it very clearly. Of course, there is one question for Ms. Jaya from Dr. Vijay Lakshman from Kerala. And he is asking, what is the nature of the end product of this process in both the traditions? The phenomenological residuum in the Western tradition and the Purusha in Kaivalya in the Indian tradition.
Okay. Actually, the end product of the yoga tradition is transformation from the empirical notion of reality. From my understanding, I explained this. But in phenomenology, in Husserlian phenomenology, they are stuck in empirical notion. They are very stuck in empirical reality. They said the transcendental subjectivity is there and all, but even though they are stuck in empirical reality, so it is not like a fulfillment of process. Am I audible, ma'am? Yes. So the main difference between the end products of these two systems is one is completely transcendentally converted into a spiritual realm, but in phenomenology, it is stuck with empirical level of reality. This is my answer.
Okay. There is also one question as to can we apply the same kind of comparison to other systems? Like, say, for example, Ramanuja system, where you have this concept of a Saguna Brahman and then you go further to a Nirguna Brahman. Or would you like to keep the comparison between phenomenology and the Yoga Darshana only?
Actually, I'm not go deep into that system because I'm just only comparative with yoga and phenomenology only. So maybe in future I can study about more.
Okay, of course.
My experts will answer.
Okay, before I ask Dr. Krishnan to answer that, I wanted to ask you now, do you feel that Husserl had to put forward a theory like phenomenology because of the conditions that he was in, the time period? Was there any necessity for him to, as Dr. Krishnan mentioned, it was a very tumultuous period, right? There were a lot of political changes happening. We had, of course, existentialism of Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and others. And then we had Heidegger. So do you think there was a compelling reason for Husserl to come up with something like a system of phenomenology? That is my question. And then, of course, I would request Dr. Krishnan to answer the earlier question that I asked. So can you answer that, Ms. Jaya?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, please continue.
Yes. Actually, the network is I can't hear you. So can you ask one?
No, the question was there some compelling necessity for Husserl to put forward his theory of phenomenology, given the political situation in that century? Like we had existentialism of Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, we had Heidegger, we had a whole lot of contemporary philosophers who were putting rather diagrammatically opposite philosophical systems forward. So was there any particular necessity?
Yes, from my understanding, I can say that in that 19th and 20th century, of that at that time, the existential is very relevant because the Second World War is going on at that time. So people are so much afraid, and they are more drastically what we call drastically just mind out. So they have to concentrate their mind on something, and they lose their self also. So in that scene, the phenomenology entries. In phenomenology is the main focus is on consciousness. So the existentialists take or adapt this basic notion of essence to existence. So this is the relevance of phenomenology at that time. So existentialists had to adopt the notion of Husserl's phenomenology, that is essence, for their existentialist philosophy, to build their existential philosophy. The same notion, essence changed to existence, and that is the relevance of that time.
Okay, and Dr. Krishnan, there was an earlier question as to whether we can do this process of comparison between phenomenology and the Yoga Darshana with other darshanas as well. Say, for example, Ramanuja's, when we have the Saguna Brahman and the Nirguna Brahman. That is when we have the concept of intentionality, where it is subject-oriented process, and then we go higher.
Yes. To that, I would say definitely we can do a comparative study of phenomenology with Vishishta Advaita, Ramanuja's Vishishta Advaita. He has presented the world as a real, it's a reality, and he has raised a lot of criticisms on Shankara, where they have said that it is an appearance. Shankara and other Advaitins who have mentioned the world as an appearance, etc., etc. But world as a reality has been already treated by Husserl by using the concepts of life world and intersubjectivity. So definitely we can do good amount of comparison. There is a lot of scope for research, and what Acharya Ramanuja has brought about is the Bhakti movement. He has, he has rejuvenated the Bhakti movement, where it had become dry philosophy. He rejuvenated it. So this Bhakti movement, you may not find an equivalent in the Western scientific community or the Western analytic philosophers. Continental philosophers like Husserl and Hegel, etc. You may get something out of it. But otherwise, comparing the other side, the aspects of metaphysics, definitely is possible. Intersubjectivity, life world, they have been well brought about. In fact, the concepts used by Ramanuja are about Sri Krishna, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, etc. These are all not just ideal persona. They are the concepts of certain states of consciousness. You should, whoever asks the questioner, definitely you can go into it and do some research, and you can publish it.
I think there is one final question. Probably one gentleman, Mr. Venkatraman, has asked, do you think yogis in modern times, I think probably he is meaning in a very different sense, they have bridges formed between their body and external world, but not with their own inner self? By yogi, I think probably he's meaning a certain class of yoga practitioners. So you can take the question and explain it.
Yes,
whichever way you want.
expert. Yes.
Is that for the researcher?
Yes. Jaya, that was for you, please.
Yes, ma'am.
That question was for you.
Yes, ma'am. I can't answer this because I'm not much aware about this, that particular kind of sannyasins, just their body and self.
Okay, fine. I think we'll have to finally hand it over to Dr. Krishnan to give the final answer, and before we wind up, of course. Yes, please.
Ma'am, when the questioner says that we build bridges between our inner self and the outer world, again, you can see like the Asmita consciousness, that mind and otherness, they're getting related. You're relating the two. And Patanjali's Yoga Shastra is definitely relevant. There, if we introduce the concepts of, if we are really serious, any yogi, if he is really serious, he would follow the 8-limbed path, and you have yamas, niyamas, you have social disciplines. If you're true to the path, you may make mistakes. Everybody is bound to make mistakes. Nobody is to use Hindi words. I beg your indulgence. कोई दूध का दूल्हा नहीं है. कोई दूध का दूल्हा नहीं है. There have been mishaps in the West. There have been mishaps in the East. But if you do a religious study of philosophy, you will reach somewhere. Along with the practices, along with the daily activity of a methodological activity of getting back to self-awareness and getting back to the pure pre-reflective self-awareness. Yes, one can definitely reach. You don't need to go to the Himalayas and do it. In fact, Shankara himself later on has admitted, because why would he introduce all the bhakti, so many stotras Shankara has introduced in praise of the Devi, the Devatas. He has found the futility of jumping an ashrama directly from brahmacharya to sannyasa. The futility of jumping, many of the youngsters, I find that they would run away to and give their entire life sweeping, and okay, that's fine, it's not wrong. But you would rather sweep the ashrama's floors and clean the ashrama's toilets than clean your house toilet and house floor, isn't it? Huh? So the taking up of the responsibility inside the house with your family, you want to give up that ownership, but you would rather do a social activity somewhere else. So charity begins at home. So it begins with your body, your mind, your intersubjectivity. Slowly you expand your universe to this, your family, your society, your state. So I hope I have answered that well enough.
Yes, I think you did answer it with a good dose of humor as well. So I think it was a good session on the whole, and most of the questions are done. And there has been a fair amount of appreciation also, I think, on the FB page from what I can make out. And of course, I would like to inform Dr. Krishnan that Dr. Uma Shankar is also watching, and she has registered her presence. So we come then to the formal vote of thanks, unless either of you or Dr. Jayashree or Aishwarya would like to add anything or say make any observation. Otherwise, I would be going to the formal vote of thanks. Is there anything that you wish to add? No.
I think it was really a very, very interesting session, and we came to know so much from Dr. Krishnan. Of course, as he said, Jaya has done a good job, but that was a framework, and Dr. Krishnan took us so much, in a very easy way. He took us to a different level. We would definitely like to hear more of your lectures, but I think now I will just hand it over to Rajshri to propose a vote of thanks. Thank you so much, sir.
So it's my very pleasant duty to propose the official vote of thanks. And I begin by thanking our expert for today, Dr. Krishnan, who was referred to me by my very good friend, Dr. Uma Shankar, Principal SIS College. And the moment I told her that this is the topic and I'm looking for someone who will be able to do justice to both phenomenology and the Yoga Darshana, her first statement was, I will put you in touch with Dr. Krishnan. So I think she could understand what I wanted, and he has completely validated her trust in him. And thank you so much, sir, for giving us all those insights, which only someone who has gone into the Yoga Darshana with a lot of passion will be able to bring out. Because these are two different and rather difficult worlds to straddle at the same time. So you have done it remarkably well. So thank you so much, sir, for being with us today. And of course, we should thank Ms. Jaya, because it was her attempt to explore these two systems that made me look for somebody who could come as an expert. And I must tell her that before I contacted Dr. Uma, I was searching a little in my circles, and I found that not many had worked in that area. So I think congratulations to you for doing a good job. It's a difficult task, not easy, particularly because not only are we talking about two traditions, Indian and Western, but the centuries that divide them are so vast that it's difficult to make a kind of a justifiable comparison. So thank you, Jaya, for doing justice to that. And of course, I must thank my good friend, Dr. Vijay Lakshman, who was my junior at the University of Madras Philosophy Department, for suggesting her and giving a full-fledged session on philosophy, which is frankly after my heart, I should say. And I would fail in my duty if I do not thank our Guru, Padma Bhushan, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, who has given us direction to explore a wide canvas of all aspects of Indian culture, each and every aspect of it, because she feels that it is so holistic that as long as we are able to see the networking between them, we can do full justice to it. So our pranams to her for guiding us constantly. And on our part, from Center of Excellence, Art and Culture, we would like to thank our Secretary, Mr. Abhay Shri Shrimal Jainji, and our Principal, Dr. S. Padmavati. And on behalf of Nrityodaya Academy of Performing Arts, we would like to thank Mahindra Finance and Mr. Ramesh for standing by us in this venture. And of course, thanks are due to Ms. Ramya Harish for joining in from Singapore and rendering very melodiously an apt verse from the Yoga Darshana. Ms. Aishwarya Harish for being the MC, and Ms. And to all our viewers who have been with us in this journey. And we are happy to inform you that we are confirming our next session, which will be on July 2nd, again a Friday. The young researcher is Ms. Nagaranjita from Bangalore, and she will be speaking on the cultural aspects, particularly dance during the Gupta age. So we are back to history. And the expert for that session will be Professor Varsha from SIS College, Mumbai, who is heading the history department. So even as we are preparing for one session, it gives us great joy that the next session automatically gets confirmed, because there are so many of these young researchers who are looking for an avenue, and we feel blessed that we're able to provide them with that avenue. So thank you once again, all of you, for listening in, for putting all those wonderful questions there. And I think I would also like to thank my student interns. Some of them had asked maybe a little amateurish questions, but they are questions which worry them. And this is one forum in which they are able to get the answers. So as long as we can create interest in these students who are not even connected sometimes with the topic that is being discussed, I think the job is well done. So thank you so much once again to Dr. Krishnan and Ms. Jaya, and hoping to have all of you again in our next session. Shubharatri.